The next speaker, Sean Michael Crane, he's a hell of a guy. I got the opportunity to have him on the podcast, get to know him. I mean, he was relentless. He just, really great story, big heart. He's the founder and CEO of Unstoppable, an elite self-mastery program for men looking to maximize their results in all aspects of life. I know there's a lot of people that work with him. They're getting their body in shape. They're becoming better fathers. They'll be better husbands. They're just working on themselves. And Sean's got an amazing story that he's going to share with you guys. He's a great guy, really. Try to pack this thing full of amazing people that you could take something from and implement in your life. Sean is going to come out here and give you guys an amazing keynote speech. He's an amazing guy. Let's give it up for Sean Michael Crane.
Thanks for me. My man. Thank you, brother. Appreciate you.
Hello, brother.
Okay. We got a clicker up here? How's everyone doing? Good? Let's get the energy going, huh? You guys tired or what? No. We got some slides going. There we go. Okay, before I start, if you guys want to scan the QR code, follow me on social media, I'll follow you back. I love staying connected with everyone. That's how Tommy and I connected, right? Through a mutual acquaintance. The thing I love about Tommy is he wants to be the best, right? He opened up this conference talking about his physique and why he's working out, why he's taking all these peptides. I forgot I was at a home service event, right? I thought I was at like a fitness event. Tommy's showing his body, his before and afters. But that's what it's all about. You know, my mission is to be my best self in life, and that's what I want to inspire each and every one of you to do. It's in our business, for our families, but first and foremost for ourselves. Now, I wasn't always this way. You know, I spent 2,000 days in prison changing my life. So today I want to share with you what I learned through that experience, but more importantly, the actual changes I made in a jail cell to get back control of my life. And I promise, if you apply what I share with you today, it's going to enhance the quality of your life in everything that you do. I guarantee it. At the age of 23, I was arrested and faced a life sentence in prison for a crime that I didn't commit. I was thrown into this tiny little cell where I lived for 24 hours a day with nothing. And I'll never forget my first day being brought into court. They had me shackled up at my wrists and ankles. And I'm hobbling into the courtroom. And I see members of the news press in the audience. They're taking my picture. They put my picture on the front page of the Santa Barbara News Press. Sean Crane, charged with attempted murder. And as I was being brought up to the podium to be seen by the judge, I saw this woman staring at me, started walking in my direction. And for a second, I got hopeful because I realized it was my lawyer. You see, I thought she was going to help me that day. But she didn't say much to me. In fact, the only thing that she did say was, "Mr. Crane, the judge and the district attorney, they want to amend your charges to homicide. Yeah, the victim, he's in a coma and they don't think he's going to survive." And then she just walked away. In that moment, I couldn't even grasp the severity of what was taking place in my life. It felt too surreal. And so in the next couple hours, they took me back to my cell where I was in complete isolation. And for the next 24 to 48 hours, my mind was racing. You know, I felt like I had to find an answer to help me to understand what I was going through. You see, we all see this happen to other people. We've read about it in books, you've seen it on the news, you've watched it in movies, but you never think it could actually happen to you. And so I remember I was sitting there and I just started thinking about all these memories from childhood. I was thinking about my family, my parents, friends, school. I was trying to find an answer to help me to understand what I was going through. And that's when something life-changing happened in my life. I started to think about all the things that I hadn't done. I started to think about all the dreams and goals I had as a kid that I never pursued. And I started to realize that I had wasted my life and taken it all for granted. In that moment, I experienced the most intense pain in the form of regret you could ever imagine for the way I had lived my life. The pain that I experienced in that moment was worse than the thought of spending life in prison. And I want to ask each and every one of you in here right now, if you found yourself in that same situation, or God forbid, you go to the doctor next week and they tell you that you have a terminal illness, your life is over. What if they told you had 6 months to live? What if they said you had 6 weeks? What are the parts of your life right now that you would regret the most? What are the goals that you all have that you're procrastinating on? What are the changes you always tell people you're going to make, but you're not making? You see, that's what's at stake for each and every one of us in here today. But the thing is, if you hold back, if you play small, and you don't act on that calling in your heart for who you want to become, it's not just you that's going to suffer in the end. Everybody in your life who needs you, who depends on you, they're going to suffer too. Now, I want to ask you, what do you think the number one regret people actually have at the end of their life is? Anybody? The number one regret people have at the end of their life is that they didn't have the courage to live the life that they wanted, but instead they lived a life based on other people's expectations. Can you believe that? They didn't have the courage? You see, I think it goes deeper than that though. I think if those individuals had known what was at stake in their lives and how they were going to feel at the end, they would have lived much differently. I know I would have. When I was younger, if I had known what I was going to feel when I sat in that jail cell thinking my life was over, I would have lived way differently. If I had known what I was going to feel when I sat in that cell thinking that my life was over, I would have dreamt bigger. I would have taken more action. I would have taken risks. I would have been all in. If I had known what I was going to feel when I sat in that cell thinking that my life was over, I wouldn't have worried about what other people thought of me. I wouldn't let doubt and fear hold me back. If I had known what I was going to feel when I sat in that cell thinking that my life was over, I wouldn't have created a life that I'd regret one day. You see, and it was that feeling in that moment that changed my life forever. And if there's one thing that I seek to inspire everybody to do, is to live with more urgency. We have to live with the urgency and understanding that we will die. We all need to live with the urgency, recognizing we don't know how much more time we have to live. And you need the urgency, understanding that people desperately need your example in life. As I was having these breakthroughs in my cell, suddenly a thought struck me, and it absolutely broke my heart. I realized that nobody in my life ever really knew who I was. I had never shown anybody my true potential. You see, growing up as a kid, I had these big dreams. I wanted to be a professional athlete, and I felt fully capable to carry them out. I felt certain in my abilities. But at a young age, my home life started breaking apart. My parents were battling addiction. I'd see them fight. I saw really horrible things. The cops would come to our house. I saw my mother overdose several times. And I didn't know how to deal with those early life events. I felt lost. I had no direction, no guidance. And then at the age of 14, I lost both my parents. I lost my father to state prison and my mother to the streets and her addiction. I couldn't process what was happening in my life. I didn't know how to react to the emotional impact of those life events. And I found myself turning to drugs and alcohol to numb out my pain. So from 14 to 23, I was addicted to drugs and alcohol, and I had no purpose in my life. Thinking about these things in my jail cell, in that moment, prompted me to make two promises to myself that I've kept ever since, and they changed my entire life. The first one was in regards to that regret that I experienced. You know, I was so ashamed of myself. I knew I was better than that, but I had held back, and I hated the way I felt. And I remember in that moment, I just made this promise to myself. I said, you know what? I don't know how much time I'm going to do in prison. It doesn't matter. I'm going to be my best self. I'm going to be my true self every moment going forward, and I'm going to give my best effort to everything I do for the rest of my life. I had to do that for me. Now, the second promise I made was in relation to my family's battle with addiction growing up. I lost so many people on my journey. I saw so many family members and friends die early or succumb to a miserable life behind their addiction. I was following that path, and I didn't want to be like that. I didn't want to end up like my parents. I didn't want to be a drug-addicted loser anymore. And in that moment, I made a promise that I would be clean and sober for the rest of my life. That was 11 years ago, and I've been sober ever since. I know a lot of people who want to make changes in their lives, but they overthink it, right? They want this perfect plan in this perfect moment before they're willing to take action. And because of that, they stay stuck. Now, when I made those promises to myself, I didn't know what the future held in store for me. I couldn't even see beyond the moment. I was just more aware of who I didn't want to be and what I would no longer tolerate in my life. And sometimes, if you're wanting to make a change, it's just as important to know what you don't want as it is to recognize what you do want in your life. So if you're somebody that's procrastinating, but you know you want to make a change, you know you have things you want to improve, you don't have to have it all figured out before you start. I didn't. You just have to be willing to make a commitment and take action. And look, over time, the more action you take, the more clarity you're going to get in your life. So waking up in that 6x8 cell every day, it was absolute torture. My cell was this big, and I was going to court, nothing was happening. They were still telling me life in prison. Every day when I would wake up, immediately I would start thinking about all the negative things in my life. How I was gonna go to prison for the rest of my life. How no one believed that I was innocent. Nobody was trying to help me. You see, the truth was, I was acting like a victim. Now, I recognized that nobody was coming to save me. Nobody was gonna be able to get me out of that cell. And I was gonna have to find a way to fight and persevere, or I was gonna perish in that jail cell. You see, a lot of people go through tough times in their lives, right? A lot of people go through hardships, difficult times, challenges. In fact, 70% of adults are gonna go through trauma at least one time or another as they grow older. Now, this might not be something as intense as my situation, but we're talking about seeing violence at home growing up, being abused, being bullied at school, and as you get older, maybe a tough breakup, a car accident, maybe something happens in your business, you go bankrupt, whatever it is. And most people react one of two ways. They either become victims of circumstance, like I was doing in my jail cell, and they start to feel sorry for themselves, they start to blame others, they get mad and angry at the world, or they go into denial, and that's what I did before prison. We don't want to talk about it. We want to pretend it's not real. And I used drugs and alcohol in an attempt to escape, but that didn't work either. You see, there's one way that we can go through these traumatic, difficult times in life and emerge better versions of ourselves than we were before they happened. And that's if we're able to find meaning in those moments. Meaning in your pain. Meaning in your suffering. Meaning that gives you a greater perspective and more gratitude for the life that you have. So the way I was able to do this in my cell was I had to start talking to myself differently. I couldn't just wake up and think, why is this happening to me? Why is no one trying to help me? I had to change my internal dialogue, and I had to be open-minded enough to look for different answers. And so I remember I just started thinking to myself, Sean, what if you needed to come to jail? Like, what if you needed to come to jail to get sober, and this experience is gonna save your life? Sean, what if you needed to come to jail to get away from all those toxic and dysfunctional relationships you had and figure out who you are as a person? And Sean, what if this experience is actually a blessing in disguise and God has a plan for you that you can't see right now? And the result was that I was able to create hope in a hopeless situation. You see, jail taught me to have faith. And we all need an element of faith on this journey, especially if you want to be successful. Faith that all your hard work's gonna pay off. Faith that despite what other people are saying, you can bring that vision to life. And faith that somehow, some way, as long as you don't quit and give up on yourself, it's all gonna work out in your favor. You see, what I know now is people who have faith do better than people who don't have faith because they stay in the fight. And so next time you're being tested, you're challenged, the economy's down, you're going through tough times in your relationship, whatever it is that you're facing, the way you tap into this faith, right, is when you're going through those difficult times, you don't just react, you don't get emotional. I want you to pause and I want you to ask yourself, how can I learn and grow from these circumstances? How can I learn and grow through this situation? And what'll happen if you do that consistently and apply this thinking in your life is when something happens, you're not gonna immediately feel at a disadvantage. You're not going to be discouraged. You're not going to be upset. You're not going to react impulsively. You're going to find a way to win, or you're going to learn through those circumstances. But here's the thing. Positive thinking alone is not enough, okay? It's positive action that changes your life. Can you imagine if I just sat in that cell and thought to myself, oh, life is happening for me, not to me. You know, life is happening for me, not to me. It's going to be okay. But I didn't do anything? Eventually, I wouldn't have believed it, and I would have went back to being hopeless in that cell. You see, it's the positive action that turns those thoughts into concrete beliefs that can change our lives long term. And so what I started doing was I'd wake up every morning, and my feet would hit that cold cement floor in my jail cell, and I'd ask myself, what can I do to better myself today in this cell? What can I do right now to better myself in this cell? And so I found 3 things that I could start to do in my jail cell to build momentum. The first was exercise, the second was reading, and the third was writing. Every single day, exercise, reading, and writing. That's all I focused on. But here's the thing, when I'd go into my workout routine in the morning, I wouldn't just go through the motions. I wouldn't just do a couple push-ups and call it quits. When I was doing my workout, I was working out like it was the last day I had arms and legs. And in the midst of that workout, I'd be talking to myself. And I'd tell myself, man, I'm so blessed to have this body that works right now. I'm so blessed to have my arms and legs. Some people, they're in wheelchairs. Some people are paralyzed. I get to work out. I get to. And then again, as I was reading my book, I'd remind myself, man, I'm so blessed to have this book to read. I could use my imagination. I have eyes. I could actually see. Some people don't have their sight. I get to read this book. I get to. And then when I was writing my letters back home, same thing. I'd be writing my letters, and I'd remind myself, man, I'm so blessed to have this love and support from my family. You know, they're here for me every step of the way through this difficult time. I get to write these letters. I get to. And see, what I was doing was I started to cultivate a gratitude perspective. Instead of focusing on all the things outside of my control and all the things working against me, I chose to focus on the small amount of things within my control, and it helped me to see the good in my life despite my circumstances. How often do you all go through your day and you say, I have to? Oh, I have to take these extra sales calls. Oh, I have to drive across town to take my son to the doctor after work. Oh, I have to get up in the morning and go to the gym. I have to. Look, first of all, you don't have to do anything, okay? It's a choice. Second of all, when you talk about your life that way, through that negative lens, it's gonna make you feel bad about what you're doing. Those 3 words, I get to, can instantly shift you from an a low emotional standpoint to one of gratitude. It can instantly shift your energy from feeling low motivation, not inspired to take action, to seeing the good in your life. And here's the thing, those things that you say, I have to do this, I have to do that, I promise you to be begging God for those back in your life if they were taken from you. So next time you have low energy, you're feeling pessimistic, you're not in the right headspace, remind yourself, man, I get to live this life. I get to go to the gym and work out and take care of my health. I get to take those extra sales calls and make more money for my family. I get to drive across town and spend more time with my boy. Whatever it is. I want to say this again because it's important to recognize it. If those things were taken from you, those things we complain about, those things we have to do, you would be begging God to have them back in your life. Remember that. Write those 3 words down. I get to. So every day I was getting up and I was taking these actions. I mean, weeks after weeks after weeks, months after months after months. This became my world. This became my sole focus. I stopped paying attention to what was happening outside of that cell. And I remember I started to feel something shift internally that I had never experienced in my life. I remember I started to feel proud of myself for the first time since I was a little kid. And all I was doing was working out, reading, and writing, but I was taking constant actions every day that helped me to feel good about myself. Now, there's an interesting statistic. 85% of people lack self-esteem, confidence, and belief in themselves. Why do you think that is? Anybody? It's simply because they're not taking actions consistently that help them to feel good about themselves. Tommy talked about self-love. I started to love myself in a jail cell. I started to love my life because of who I was becoming. I was no longer sabotaging myself with drugs and alcohol. I wasn't holding back, I was all in. And it didn't matter that I was in a 6x8 cell, the feeling that I had internally changed my entire life. I was going to sleep at night in prison or in my jail cell, feeling an energy inside of me that I'd never felt in my life. I mean, my mind would race and flood as I sat on my rack getting ready to go to sleep with the most beautiful thoughts about life and what could happen after prison or if I ever got out. You know, and I was feeling this gratitude and this inner peace that I had never had before. It blew my mind. And I remember I went to visitation right before I went to prison. And my Uncle Mike was the person waiting for me. Now, growing up, my Uncle Mike was the individual who really saved my life. When my parents disappeared, he stepped up to raise me and my siblings. He was everything to me. And as a kid, he would always remind me, Sean, you're capable of great things in life. Sean, you're a leader. Sean, you can do anything you set your mind to. And then I went through those dark years of life where he and I were disconnected and I was getting in trouble and getting high and not going to school. But I never forgot what he told me. He instilled that belief into who I could be when I was a young kid. That belief that I desperately needed to tap back into in those dark times in my jail cell. And I remember we were sitting in visitation and we're talking, and I'm telling him about all this stuff I'm doing in my tiny little cell. And he kind of like chuckled and he looked at me a little confused. And I was like, what? Yeah, I'm working out, I'm reading, I'm doing all these things, what? He's like, I haven't seen you laugh and smile this much since you were a little kid. He goes, what's going on, Sean? I said, I don't know, I'm just feeling different, Uncle Mike. You know, something inside me changed. He goes, you're back. You're back to that kid that I remember running around the baseball diamond. You're back to that kid I used to pick up at the beach who was so full of life. You see, he recognized the change that took place in me. He could hear it in my voice. He could see it in my eyes. He saw it in my body language. And that was one of the most gratifying moments of my life because this man sacrificed his life to take care of me. And I felt so ashamed when I went through that time in my life where I was doing bad things. You know, I wanted to make him proud. I wanted to show him who I truly was. And in that moment, I got to. And it was one of the best moments of my life. My Uncle Mike passed away 2 months ago. And you know, I know a lot of you in here have people who are close to you or you've lost loved ones. And they're special people, right? They had a massive impact on your life and maybe who you've become. And the way I think about death and losing people that we love is my mission going forward is to always live every day in remembrance of him. The man that he was for me as a kid, I want to make him proud because I know that he's still with me. I carry his energy and his memory around everywhere that I go. And so every day I'm going to take massive action in my life to honor him and what he did for me when I needed him most. By the time I was sentenced to prison, I'd already gone through such a powerful shift that I wasn't daunted by the 7 years that they gave me. My mindset was that I was going to turn every single day in prison to the most productive, positive day of my life. And when I came home and overcame that challenge, there was nothing that I couldn't do with my life. That was my mindset. And my main focus was keeping this change, this energy that I felt inside of me alive. You see, my biggest fear was that I was going to wake up one day and that spark was going to be gone. That gratitude was going to be gone. That inner peace was going to be gone. That drive was going to be gone. So my main focus every day became to keep that energy inside of me alive. I wanted nothing more than to be able to come home and show people who I truly was and what I was made of. And so every day in prison, I continued with the same daily routines. I just doubled down on everything I was already doing. So instead of a couple hundred burpees in the morning, I started doing 1,000 push-ups and 1,000 squats while everybody else in the dorm slept. Well, it was still dark outside, and before we even went to breakfast, I was in the corner working out. And the same thing with my education and reading and writing. I started getting all these different books sent into me. All the great personal development books. Think and Grow Rich by Napoleon Hill. 7 Habits of Highly Effective People by Stephen Covey. I read everything you can imagine. All the books by Robert Kiyosaki, Rich Dad, Poor Dad. I devoured information. I was insatiable with my growth. And then I found out they had college courses, and I could take college courses in prison. I thought it was the coolest thing. So I enrolled in every course they had. I studied biology, psychology, business, social and behavior sciences. I took every course they had available. And in my time in prison, I got 4 associate's degrees. They gave me 6 months off my sentence because of that. And about 2 to 3 years into my incarceration, a lot of the other guys started noticing I was different. Like, what's up with this guy? He's up early, working out every day. Like, why is he so motivated? What does he have to look forward to when he gets out? You know, they didn't understand what I was doing. And so I started showing these guys. I started working out with them and helping them get in better shape. I started showing them what books I was reading. And I even helped a couple of them enroll in college courses. And the coolest thing started to take place in that time. I started to see each one of these men change before my eyes. I started seeing them get in better shape. They started walking differently. They had more confidence. They started talking about life after prison differently, about things they wanted to do and what was possible for them. You see, in that moment, I realized, wow, this is amazing. I'm just showing these guys what I've done to change, and it's helping them, and they're changing right before my eyes. And I realized that was what I was gonna do when I got out. I wanted to be of service to other people. I wanted to coach, help, and inspire other men to transform their lives the way I had been able to do. And you see, a lot of people ask me, how do you find your purpose, Sean? Like, you found your purpose in prison. How do you find your purpose? And I tell them all the same thing. I say, look, initially your purpose is to become your best self. Whatever your heart is calling you to do, whatever those actions are, you have to take action and follow that path. And as you traverse that path, right, on the midst of that journey, eventually a greater calling is going to emerge for you. I'll never forget my last day in prison, man. It's like one of those days you just dream about. And to be honest with you, in prison, you try not to think about the last day because it just creates anxiety and stress when you have 5 more years to go, 5 more birthdays. So you block it out, but you never fully block it out because you anticipate that day heavily. And so the last day, I remember I was just so excited. I wanted to be reunited with my family. I was so grateful to finally get out. But then you experience a lot of stress and anxiety as well. I mean, there's a lot of pressure getting out of prison to rebuild your life. Here I was getting out at nearly 30 years old with $200 in my pocket, no wife, no kids, no home, no clothes, nothing. I had nothing to my name. And I remember I was staying in a trailer on my aunt and uncle's property, and I was doing manual labor for my uncle. He owned a tree service business that I used to work for when I was younger. And I remember just thinking, this isn't the way it was supposed to be. I had this vision of how it was just all gonna unfold perfectly for me, and here I am picking up sticks and carrying up logs up a hill. And I just kept thinking to myself, man, this isn't how it's supposed to be. What's happening here? I gotta do something. I had this vision, I had this dream. Look what I just went through. And so about 2 months after I got out, I remember I was just going through my contacts, trying to make something happen, right? Being resilient, being resourceful, being relentless. Like, I'm not just gonna sit there and wait for something to come my way. And I came across an old name of a friend I knew growing up, and I knew he was a personal trainer. And I remember I just called him up and I said, man, what are you doing? I just got out. You know, I wanna work with people, I wanna train people, I wanna help people. What do you got going on? And he actually had a personal training business back in my hometown of Santa Barbara. So he said, hey, I could actually bring you to this gym and you could train clients under me. Like, I'll give you a start, but you gotta get certified. So this course that normally takes 3 to 6 months to get certified as a personal trainer, I took it and got certified in like 2 weeks. I had read all the books, I knew all the information. I just spent years studying exercise, anatomy, nutrition, I knew it all. And so I called him back, I'm like, dude, I'm ready. Like, I'm ready. This is my shot, I'm going for it, I'm all in. And then the day before I was set to go back to Santa Barbara, these wildfires broke out all over Southern California. My uncle nearly lost his property. We had to go stay in an Airbnb. It was crazy. And then a couple weeks after that, these rainstorms came through and caused mudslides. So now all the freeways were shut down. The US 101 North was shut down. People died in those mudslides. It was horrific. And I'm sitting there thinking, man, what the heck am I gonna do? Like, I can't even leave this little bubble of an area we're in. We're locked in. And again, I just knew I had to do something. I can't sit there. I sat there for 6 years waiting for these opportunities, and now they're right in front of me. I gotta make something happen. That was my mindset. And I started going back through my contacts again. And I remember Nick Carver, I saw that name. Nick Carver was a friend growing up, and he did sunset tours in Santa Barbara. He flew a little single-engine Cessna plane. This is how crazy I am, right? I'm just starting to take action and things are happening. So I call him up, I'm like, Nick, what's going on, man? These mudslides are crazy, I'm stuck down here, I gotta get to Santa Barbara. You still fly, or what are you doing? He's like, that's crazy you called me, Sean. I've been shuttling people back and forth over the mudslides on the freeway. All these executives and people who work in Santa Barbara, I've been bringing them in, like taxiing them in through the air every day. I said, well, can I get a ride with you, man? Like, I need to get to Santa Barbara and get this job. And he goes, yeah, if you meet me at the airport tomorrow morning, I'll take you. So I literally packed up all my stuff. I had everything I owned in a little duffel bag. And by that time, I'd saved like $800 up to my name, right? So I go down to the airport at 7 a.m., and we're flying in the plane to Santa Barbara, this little single-engine Cessna. And he looks over at me and he goes, man, so what's your plan? Like, where are you staying? Are you with family? Like, what are you doing? I'm like, I'm just going to get my job, man. I have nowhere to stay. I don't know what I'm doing. I'm just taking action. He goes, what do you mean, Sean? You have nowhere to stay? You have nothing planned? Like, what are you doing? I said, Nick, I just spent 6 years in prison. They almost took my life from me. Think I'm gonna sit here and just wait? I'm all in, man. I'm gonna figure it out. And he goes, well, guess what? My dad rents out college rooms to all, my dad rents out rooms to all these college kids. He might have a room for rent available. Sure enough, he did, right? I got into Santa Barbara, I went to the gym, met the owner of the gym. I was honest with him, told him where I just come from, but he saw the look in my eyes. He felt the motivation inside of me, right? Like I couldn't be denied in that moment. I went there and the job was already mine. So he said, yeah, I could train at that gym. You know, obviously don't cause any problems and you don't have to go out and tell everyone where you came from, but yeah, come here and train, man. I'm gonna give you a shot. So I had that job. And that was a job that represented hope in the industry that I wanted to be in. I knew it was a stepping stone. So the second thing I did was I drove to Nick's dad's house, gave him literally all my money for 1 month's rent for my room. Now I had a job and a place to stay. But I didn't have any transportation. So right before I had gone to Santa Barbara, I asked my uncle, like, hey, do you have a car I could use, or do you know anybody that will let me borrow their car? And he said, no, but I have a mechanic in Santa Barbara, and he has all these beat up cars he's always fixing up. Go over there, maybe he'll let you use something. And I showed up there, and he had all these cars, but he wanted money. I had no money. So I was like about to leave, I was all discouraged. And then I saw this Honda Civic, right? And this Honda Civic was so beat up, I didn't even think it was able to drive. And he goes, man, I'll let you borrow that one. I'll let you borrow that one for a couple weeks and you bring it back. Let me tell you, none of you in here would take that car. I mean, the whole rear end was just smashed in. It was the most beat up looking car you could ever imagine. I was like, I'll take it. And the next day at 4:50, I was at the gym. I parked that car around the corner so no one would see me driving. And I was training my first client by 5 a.m. Now, this is the mindset I had coming out of prison. I was gonna force growth and I was gonna create the outcomes that I wanted by any means necessary. Nothing would stop me. As long as I was walking, as long as I was breathing, nothing was gonna hold me back. And so, you know, my restless spirit, like 6 months later, I knew I wasn't an employee. I knew that I had this vision to fulfill. I couldn't just sit there working this 9 to 5, collecting a paycheck from someone else. So I left that gym and I started my own fitness company. And I started getting clients all over Santa Barbara County, and I started building up a positive reputation for myself. And so at this time, I now had a family. My wife, Jessica, and I got married. My oldest son, which is my stepson, Mason, I was taking care of him. My wife had just given birth to Scarlett, my baby girl, and we found out she was pregnant again. I told you I didn't waste any time, right? And then COVID-19 shut everything down. And overnight, I lost all my clients and all my income. And I remember just sitting there in my wife's glider at 4 in the morning, thinking, what am I gonna do? Man, like, again, this isn't how it's supposed to be. I thought it was gonna be easy after prison, you guys. I went through the hard stuff. And in that moment, man, I thought about calling my uncle back or getting a 9 to 5 just to make some money and take care of my family. Because here's the thing, when my wife and I got together, I told her, baby, I got you. Baby, you're my wife now. I'm gonna take care of you and our kids forever. You're never gonna have to work if you don't want to. I'm gonna take care of you. I told her that. I told her I got you. And here I am with $1,700 in my bank account, stressed out. You know, and in that moment, I just realized that I can't go back now. I've come too far to doubt myself. I've come too far to give up on this journey. I've come too far to quit and give up on my vision and my dreams. And so in that moment, I said, fuck a plan B. I'm all in. I know what God has put me on this earth to do, and I'm gonna pursue that vision with everything that I've got. You see, prison taught me the power of persistence. The power of persistence means that no matter what you face, you never quit and give up. If you believe that you deserve these outcomes and you're willing to work as hard as you have to bring that vision to life, you will not be denied. And so I picked up my phone and I started telling my story. I saw everyone else doing it on social media. I'm like, I got a story for you. But I'm not just a fitness coach. I've overcome depression, anxiety, sitting in that cell all day, addiction. You know, I can help people with their mindset. I can help people with so much more than just exercise and nutrition. And it started to take off and grow. I remember that first month I hit like 10K and I was like, wow, 10K, I'd wanted to make 10K a month as a personal trainer that whole year and I could never hit it. I was making like 8K, 9K, 7K. That first month I signed up clients and I started building my online coaching business. And I've never looked back. Since then, I built a 7-figure coaching business that helps men all over the country. Some of you guys are here today. We help them with their mindset, their fitness, their nutrition, and we have a community of men supporting each other. Business owners, guys in the trades, guys who want to be better for their family, guys who know that they're made for more, but they're holding back, right? And I think it was Ishmael that said, you need a tribe, you need people to be a part of this journey with, right? It's so important. You need to be around winners if you want to be one. So that's what I've been able to create. And it's amazing getting to see these guys become their best selves. And I'm not just saying that. We have guys who are losing 40, 50, 60 pounds, guys who are getting sober, guys who are showing up better for their family. And that's what this is all about. I wrote my book during that time as well. During COVID, my wife called me out. She said, hey, I thought you were going to write a book. So I said, okay. I sat there every morning, and for the next 8 months, I wrote, and we got it published, and I became a best-selling author during COVID. Now, my book, Prison of Your Own, talks about the internal battle that we all go through. Right? I believe that we're all born with this vision and this desire inside of us to be somebody great, right? We feel this calling to do something in our lives, but so many people hold back, make excuses, and doubt themselves. That's the internal prison that you've all created. That's the only thing stopping you. And when you learn how to unlock it and break through that barrier, nothing in your life is ever gonna get in your way again. You're gonna find a way to overcome everything. I promise you, you'll be able to create a life that you absolutely love and cherish. So if you haven't got my book, go ahead and grab a copy on Amazon, shoot me a message, I'll even send you one. The other thing I want to talk about is speaking on stage. You know, I mean, that's a picture of me on my first speaking engagement. I've been able to speak with some of the most incredible speakers, Ed Milet, Tim Story, Jesse Itzler. I mean, the list goes on and on. This was something I first envisioned in my jail cell. Can you imagine me just sitting in my jail cell, I got like 4 years left to go, and I'm like, I want to speak on stage one day. I want to share this message with people. I want to change lives. Can you imagine if I just said, oh, I can't do that? Oh, that's not for me. Oh, nobody will like my story. Nobody will like my message. I wouldn't be here. The power of belief is everything. You get to choose and pick what you believe. You could believe anything you want about yourself, and if you don't quit and you never give up, watch what you manifest in your life. That's the message. And the last thing I want to share with you guys, that picture of me with my children and my wife, that is everything to me. I prayed every night in prison for a family, for a wife that I could just treat as a queen, for kids that I could just give the dream life to. I wanted my own family so bad. Growing up, I never had those parents. I didn't have the life that I felt like we deserved, that we needed. I didn't have those people, you know? I didn't have my mom and dad the way I needed them. And I just wanted to be able to do it the right way. I wanted to break that pattern. I wanted to break that curse. And when I got out of prison, God put Jessica right in front of me, man. It was amazing, the timing of everything. And we've been able to create this beautiful life together. You know, they're actually at the aquarium right now. I'm gonna take them to Disney World. That's everything, you guys. And I just want you to think about the people who depend on you, right? Who's the woman or man you're sleeping next to at night? Who are the little kids that look to you like you're their God, you're their superhero, you're supposed to be? For me, this is everything. I will never make an excuse because I know how it's gonna affect me and who I become for them. I know every excuse I make is gonna take away from the quality of life that they could have had. That's my motivation. I don't have trouble getting up in the morning. I don't have trouble being disciplined with what I eat or going to the gym. Are you kidding me? If you have loved ones who depend on you, recognize, man, that when you become your best self and you devote your life to making you a priority every single day, you will give them the best life because you're gonna be your best self. And so the last thing I wanna share is like, this is a mantra that I've created. Like the man who refuses to quit, the woman who refuses to quit cannot be stopped in life. How do you develop this type of belief and conviction in yourself? How do you start to develop this mindset? It's through action every day. When you're tired, get up. When you don't want to work out, work out. When you don't want to do those things that your mind is telling you not to do, you got to push through that uncomfortable feeling. Because I know each and every one of you have this version of this person that you want to be. I know all of you have this feeling inside of you. It's like this calling. Sometimes we can't even articulate it. You know how I know? Because for 14 years of my life, I felt that. Sean, you're better than that. Sean, stop hanging out with those kids. Sean, get sober. It was like this faint whisper. But I kept ignoring it. I kept ignoring it, and I was making my life worse because of it. I was sabotaging who I could have been. The moment that I made the choice that I was going to start listening to that voice, my whole world changed. But it didn't change in the form of money, cars, material items. I had to spend 6 years proving how bad I wanted it. 6 years listening to my conscience and taking action every day in alignment with that person. 6 years of proving to myself who I was and what I was capable of. So when I got out and I got my second chance, I wasn't gonna give up. I wasn't gonna hold back. I wasn't gonna question it. And so the last thing I wanna share is that if any of you in here are struggling in your business, it's because you're not the person you need to be successful. And that's it. And once you figure that out, it almost becomes easy. Double down on your personal development. Take better care of yourself. Work out more, eat better food, stop drinking, stop fucking around. You get one life. Mine was so close to being taken forever, and that's because I live differently now because of that. I literally feel like I died and came back to life. When they told me life in prison, I thought it was done. I thought it was over. And when I found out that I was going to get a second chance, I made a promise, and I've never broken that promise once. And I guarantee if you do the same in your life, you're going to see everything improve as you do. And one day you'll look back and you'll be so grateful for the journey and who you've become. Thank you very much. Love you all.